What if the most dangerous ruler in Viking Age Eastern Europe wasn't a warlord, it was a widow? In 945 AD, Prince Igor of the Kievan Rus was captured by a Slavic tribe called the Drevlians while collecting tribute. They didn't simply kill him. They bent 2 young birch trees to the ground, tied his legs between them, and let go. He was torn in half. Then they sent their finest nobles to his widow with a marriage proposal, as if grief could be negotiated. Olga of Kiev smiled at the men who murdered her husband, and that smile was the last thing 20 of them ever saw. Believing they had won, the Drevlians made a fatal mistake. They expected Igor's widow to accept their prince as her new husband and peacefully unite the 2 kingdoms. Olga agreed. She honored them, just as she promised. She had them carried through Kiev in their boat, at dawn straight into a pit she'd ordered dug overnight. They were buried alive. She leaned over the edge and asked if the honor was to their liking. That was only revenge number 1. This is the story of the queens who didn't just survive the men who underestimated them, they erased them from the earth entirely. She then wrote to the Drevlians and asked them to send their most distinguished men. They sent them. She invited them to bathe after their long journey. She locked the bathhouse and burned it to the ground. That was revenge number 2. She then traveled to the Drevlian capital, Iskarostan, under the pretense of holding a funeral feast for Igor. She invited the Drevlian nobility. She got them drunk. Then her men, sober and waiting, drew their swords. 5,000 Drevlians were slaughtered over her husband's grave. That was revenge number 3. Revenge number 4 was the one history remembers. She besieged Iskarostan for a year. When the city would not fall, she offered peace terms. Almost insulting, she asked only for 3 pigeons and 3 sparrows from every household. The city, relieved, complied. She tied burning sulfur to the legs of every bird and released them. They flew home to their nests. Iskarostan burned to the ground in a single night. Igor, in his entire reign, had never conquered the Drevlians. His widow erased them from history in under 2 years. And then the detail that makes her impossible to forget: she converted to Christianity, became the first Rus ruler baptized by the Byzantine emperor himself, and is today venerated as Saint Olga, equal to the apostles. The Orthodox Church canonized the woman who buried men alive and burned a city with birds. The wheel does not care who is on top. It only cares who is holding the knife. 7. The mother who poisoned an empire. You are the mother of the Emperor of Rome. Your son is 14, and you have already decided that the men he trusts must die. Agrippina the Younger was the great-granddaughter of Augustus, the sister of one emperor, the wife of another, and the mother of a third. Her husband, the Emperor Claudius, had one flaw: he was still alive. In the year 54, according to Tacitus, Suetonius, and Cassius Dio, Agrippina fed Claudius a plate of mushrooms laced with poison. When the poison worked too slowly, she reportedly had her personal physician insert a poisoned feather down his throat under the pretense of helping him vomit. Her son Nero, the boy she had spent her entire life maneuvering onto the throne, was declared emperor that same day. Agrippina became, in every meaningful sense, the ruler of Rome. Coins were struck showing her face beside her son's, something no Roman woman had ever been granted. She sat behind a curtain in the Senate. She received foreign ambassadors. She had rivals executed on charges she invented herself. Claudius, for all his military campaigns, executed roughly 35 senators across 13 years. Agrippina, in her few years of direct influence, is credited by ancient sources with orchestrating the deaths of Marcus Junius Silanus, Narcissus, Domitia Lepida, and a string of others whose only crime was standing between her son and total power. She outkilled the emperor she poisoned. The irony is what finished her. Nero decided she was the one obstacle left, He tried to drown her in a collapsing boat. She swam ashore. He then simply sent soldiers. When they came for her, Tacitus reports she bared her stomach and told them to strike there the womb, she said, that had borne Nero. 6. The Empress who blinded her own son. There is a room in every empire where mothers are supposed to protect their children. Irene of Athens walked in with a hot iron. She married the Byzantine Emperor Leo IV in 769. He died young, and she became regent for their 9-year-old son, Constantine VI. Regent was supposed to be temporary. Irene had other plans. For 17 years, she governed the Byzantine Empire in her son's name, while quietly ensuring he never learned to govern it himself. She negotiated with Charlemagne. She restored the veneration of icons at the Second Council of Nicaea in 787, reshaping Christian practice for 1,000 years. She commanded armies through her generals. And when her son came of age and tried to rule, she had her supporters proclaim that no one should obey him without her name attached. He rebelled. He briefly imprisoned her. She returned, more patient than he was. In August of 797, according to the chronicler Theophanes the Confessor, Irene had her own son seized in the same purple chamber where he had been born. Her agents held him down. They drove a heated blade into his eyes. The wound was made so deep, Theophanes writes, that he died shortly afterward. Irene then declared herself Basileus, the masculine title Emperor of the Romans. She was the first woman in the 800-year history of the Roman imperial line to rule in her own name alone. The Pope in Rome considered the Byzantine throne officially vacant because a woman held it and used that pretext to crown Charlemagne Holy Roman Emperor in the year 800. Irene reshaped Christianity, provoked the founding of a rival empire in the West, and did it standing over the corpse of her own child. The wheel turns again. 5. The queen who drowned emperors in blood. A Persian army invades your kingdom and executes your husband. You are the queen of a small tribe on the edge of nowhere. 10. What do you do? If you are Tomyris of the Massagetae, in 530 BC, you send Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Persian Empire, the most powerful man on earth, a personal letter, and you tell him, according to Herodotus, that if he does not leave your land, you will give him more blood than he can drink. Cyrus had already ruled for nearly 30 years. He had toppled 3 empires. He crossed the river Jaxartes into Massagetae territory, expecting another easy victory. He captured Tomyris' son through a trick, leaving a camp full of wine, which the nomadic Massagetae had never tasted, and slaughtering them in their drunken sleep. Her son killed himself in captivity from shame. Tomyris did not send another letter. She brought her entire army. The battle that followed, Herodotus wrote, was the fiercest ever fought between barbarians. When it was over, the Persian army, the army that had never lost, was annihilated. Cyrus the Great lay dead on the field. Tomyris walked among the corpses until she found him. She had a wineskin filled with human blood. She severed his head and pushed it into the skin. "Drink your fill," she is recorded as saying. "You were thirsty for it." Cyrus had conquered half the known world without ever losing a battle. His reign ended in a wineskin held by a woman whose name Persian records tried for centuries to leave out. 4. The concubine who became the only female emperor of China. For 3,000 years of Chinese imperial history, one rule held: the Son of Heaven was a son. Wu Zetian broke it, and to break it, she had to outkill every man who ever sat on that throne before her. She entered the palace at 13 as a low-ranking concubine of Emperor Taizong of the Tang. When he died in 649, she was sent to a Buddhist convent to spend the rest of her life shaved and forgotten. She did not accept that ending. Within 2 years, she was back in the palace, this time as the favorite of Taizong's son, Emperor Gaozong. The official history accuses her of the act that began her rise. In 654, she gave birth to a daughter. The infant died in her cradle. Wu accused the reigning Empress Wang of murder. Modern historians debate whether Wang killed the child, whether the child died naturally, or whether Wu killed her own daughter to frame her rival. Whichever version is true, the result was identical. Empress Wang was deposed, imprisoned, and later on Wu's order had her hands and feet cut off and was drowned in a vat of wine. Wu became empress. When Gaozong suffered a stroke, she governed in his place. When he died, she governed through her sons, deposing one, exiling another, executing grandchildren who displeased her, purging entire branches of the Tang royal family. In 690, she did what no woman in Chinese history had done or would do again. She declared the Tang dynasty finished, founded her own, the Zhou, and took the title emperor, not empress. Emperor. She ruled in her own name for 15 years. When she died at 81, she left instructions for her tombstone. It was to be blank. Let later generations, she said, decide what to write on it. 13 centuries later, they still cannot agree. 3. The queen who executed a king and kept ruling. The queen whose brutality outstripped every king around her was Isabella of France, called by later chroniclers the She-Wolf. She was married at 12 to King Edward II of England, a king so weak, so obsessed with his favorites, that his own barons had already killed one of his lovers, Piers Gaveston. Edward learned nothing. He replaced Gaveston with Hugh Despenser the Younger and let Despenser plunder half the kingdom. Isabella watched her lands confiscated, her children taken from her, her allowance cut. In 1325, she was sent to France on a diplomatic mission. She refused to come back. She took a lover, Roger Mortimer, raised an army in the Low Countries, and in 1326 invaded England with a force smaller than her husband's. Edward's support evaporated in weeks. He fled. He was captured. Hugh Despenser was dragged through the streets of Hereford, hanged 50 feet in the air, castrated, disemboweled while still alive, and quartered. Isabella and Mortimer watched the execution over dinner. Edward II was forced to abdicate in favor of their 14-year-old son, Edward III. And then, in September 1327, at Berkeley Castle, the deposed king died. The chronicler Ranulph Higden and others later recorded the story that horrified medieval Europe that a red-hot iron was inserted into his body so that no external mark would show. Isabella now ruled England. For 3 years, she and Mortimer governed as regents for her son. They executed enemies, seized estates, and negotiated with Scotland on terms so humiliating the treaty was called the Shameful Peace. Edward II, in 20 years of reign, had lost battles and favorites. His widow, in 3 years, had killed a king, a chief minister, and rebuilt the royal treasury in her own name. Her son eventually turned on her. Mortimer was hanged. Isabella was quietly retired to a castle, where she lived, wealthy and comfortable. For another 27 years, the queen who murdered a king of England and was never once put on trial for it. 2. The empress who erased her rivals in a latrine. You are one of 8 women in the harem of the founding emperor of the Han dynasty. Within years, 7 of the others are dead, dying, or worse. Empress Lu Ji was the wife of Liu Bang, the peasant rebel who founded the Han dynasty in 202 BC. During his campaigns, she was captured by his enemies and held hostage for years. She survived. She returned. And she never forgave the concubine Lady Qi, who had spent those years in her husband's bed and had nearly convinced him to disinherit her son. Liu Bang died in 195 BC. Liu's son took the throne, and Liu Ji began. Lady Qi's son, the Prince Liu Ruyi, was summoned to the capital. Lu's own son, the young emperor, tried to protect the boy sleeping in the same bed with him, eating from the same dishes. One morning, the emperor rose early to go hunting. He left the boy sleeping. When he returned, Lu Ruyi was dead, poisoned. Then Lu Zi turned to Lady Qi herself. The historian Sima Qian recorded what she did in words the Chinese language has never quite recovered from. She had Lady Qi's hands cut off, then her feet, then her eyes gouged out, then her ears burned with hot smoke until she was deaf. She was forced to drink a potion that destroyed her voice. And then the detail that has haunted every Chinese schoolchild for 2,000 years. Lu Ji had her thrown into a palace latrine and left there alive, and called her the human swine. Then she brought her own son, the emperor, to see what she had done. He recognized Lady Xi. He fell ill. He told his mother that what she had done was not the act of a human being. He withdrew from ruling. He drank himself into an early grave. Lu Ji then governed the Han Empire directly for the next 8 years, installing infant emperors as figureheads and executing every rival Lu clan prince she could reach. Liu Bang had unified China through war. His widow controlled it through terror. The wheel turns again. 1. The concubine they sent away to die. She was one of 40 women in a Mughal harem. Within 20 years, her armies had killed more men than any Mughal emperor of her generation. Coins bore her name instead of her husband's, and every imperial order left the palace sealed with her signet ring. Nur Jahan entered the court of Emperor Jahangir in 1611 as a widow, her first husband executed for treason. Her prospects finished. She was 34, which in the 17th century Mughal court was considered nearly old. Jahangir married her anyway. Within 4 years she was, in the words of the Dutch merchant Peter van den Broeke, the true sovereign of the empire. Jahangir was addicted to opium and alcohol. He admitted it in his own memoirs. Nur Jahan ran the government he was too intoxicated to manage. She issued imperial edicts under her own seal, the only Mughal empress ever to do so. She had coins minted bearing her name and Jahangir's together. She held audiences behind a screen. She personally commanded troops in 1626, riding an elephant into battle to rescue Jahangir when he was captured by a rebel general leading the countercharge, taking an arrow through her howdah and freeing her husband herself. And she killed. She purged the court of every rival faction. She had her stepson Khusrau, the crown prince, murdered. She elevated her own daughter's husband as heir. Then, when that failed, backed another prince, then another, playing the sons of Jahangir against each other until the court ran red. When Jahangir died in 1627, the succession war she had spent a decade preparing exploded. Her chosen prince lost. The winner, Shah Jahan, the future builder of the Taj Mahal, knew exactly who had tried to destroy him. He did not execute her. He did something worse. He gave her a pension, a house in Lahore, and 18 years of silence. She spent those years designing her own tomb. The inscription she chose has survived. Upon the grave of this poor stranger, let there be neither lamp nor rose. Let the wing of the butterfly not burn, nor the nightingale sing. The empress, who outruled and outkilled a Mughal emperor, asked, in the end, only to be forgotten. History refused. The wheel does not care who is on top. It only cares who is holding the knife. If you want to see the men who thought they could survive women like these, the kings, the sultans, the emperors who mistook their wives for ornaments, the next video is already waiting.